Hello lovely viewers of Sharing Community, welcome back to your own channel, your own community. Thank you so much for your love and support for our visually impaired community. As always we say, sharing is caring. So please share, like and subscribe to receiving awesome contents. And also love, live, love. Take care and see you soon.
Hi everyone, this is Maggie again, and in today's video I will talk about tips for blind and partially sighted people on choosing work career. At the very beginning, I would like to mention that preparing this recording was really difficult for me because whenever I work on a material that I am planning to share, I try to ensure that all tips and solutions that I mention are as universal as they can be and that they can be useful to majority of blind and partially sighted people. However, the process of choosing work career is so complex and career choice depends on so many different factors that it is impossible to create a list of universal tips. Everyone is totally different in terms of our interests, our strengths, our goals, plans, difficulties that we may have to cope with, or our life situation. And this is why everyone has to make their own decision about which tips may be helpful to us and which tips may be irrelevant or unhelpful. I didn't want to give up though, and I didn't want to resign from talking about this very important subject because I clearly remember that after losing my sight, I experienced many very difficult moments during which I was afraid that I may never be able to overcome all of these difficulties and barriers that were ahead of me, and that I may never be able to transition from being a student to being an employee. And during all of these difficult moments, the most helpful thing to me was talking to other blind people who already were in employment and learning from their knowledge and experiences gave me courage and hope that if I continue working towards my career goals, I may be able to achieve them. And this is why I decided to share my own experiences with you. So in the first part of this video, I will briefly describe my background and say a few sentences about my education and career so far. And in the second part of this video, I will share everything that enabled me to choose my career and achieve my goals. And I am fully aware of the fact that you may find many things in this video that are not relevant to your situation, or things that may not sound so helpful. But if there is at least one little thing that may be helpful for you, then I will be very happy and I will feel that sharing my experience was helpful and it made sense. So for those of you who don't know this fact about me, I am Polish and I was born and raised in Poland. Despite the fact that I was born with severe sight impairment that was caused by many eye illnesses, I completed primary school in mainstream education. That means that I went to local school with sighted kids. During the last year of primary school, I lost my vision completely, and this is why I went to high school to Lasky School for the Blind, and after completing Polish equivalent of A-levels, I went to Catholic University of Lublin, where at first I completed Masters in Linguistics and British Literature, and I also completed their Masters in Psychology. In the fifth final year of my psychology degree, I came to England to complete my work placement, which was funded by Erasmus Socrates program. And my experiences of that work placement were so positive that I decided to remain in the UK and look for a job here. Initially, for 18 months, I was working as honorary assistant psychologist for National Health Service, and after 18 months of volunteering, I found my first full-time paid job, and I was very lucky that this job also gave me an opportunity to complete postgraduate certificate in low intensity interventions. So I had an opportunity to at the same time further develop my knowledge and also further develop my skills that were linked with my employment. And after completing this certificate, I was working for several years as psychological well-being practitioner. Then I completed another postgraduate diploma, and this time it was in cognitive behavioral therapy. And currently I work as a cognitive behavioral therapist, and this year it is 10 years since I work for National Health Services in the UK. I also have further plans of developing my careers, but I am not going to mention them until I manage to put them, into practice and until I start realizing them. So I hope that knowing my story a little bit will help you to put everything that I will share now in more context, and that all of the tips that I will share will make more sense in that context. So the first thing that really helped me to choose my employment career was to stop thinking about what I can and can't do as a blind person, and to start thinking about what I would like to do. And I just wanted to emphasize that, of course, it is important to be realistic about our limitations and about what we can and can't do. But I strongly believe that it shouldn't be a first step, and that in the first place, it is helpful to identify what we would like to do, and after we identify our areas of interest and careers that may interest us, then as a next step we may and we should be thinking about our limitations and things that we can and can't do. And I realized that for many people it is difficult to think about what we would like to do. And this is why I created a list of questions that may help us to think about our goals and about our dreams related to work. So the first question that may be useful to consider is, what gives me energy? And what I mean by this is that some jobs or some tasks are very draining for us. And some tasks or jobs energize us. So for instance, if you ask me to do some calculations for whole day, after a few hours I would be totally drained and I wouldn't be able to focus anymore on this task. But when I work with other people in a helping role, that always gives me motivation, energy, and inspiration to further improve my skills, to work as hard as I can for people. And I feel as if I was on a fascinating journey and not as if I was at work. The second question that may be worth considering is about what my strengths and what my weaknesses are. And of course, we get a lot of feedback, for instance, at school when we get marks, or at university when we get marks from other people about our strengths and weaknesses. But it's also useful to observe ourselves and identify strengths and weaknesses ourselves. And it may help us to choose career that will allow us to improve further our strengths and in which our weaknesses wouldn't be so much of an obstacle. The next question that is worth considering is what my values are. And being aware of our values may help us to choose, let's say, part of industry in which we would like to be employed, or even specific companies for which we would like to work. Because it is possible to identify which companies are prioritizing values that are also important to us. So for instance, which companies really care about, let's say, environment, or making sure that poor people are not being abused and that they don't have to work for very little money. So considering our values and also exploring values of companies around us may help us to kind of choose our right pathway. The next question is about what my interests are. And we have to remember that nowadays we need to continuously improve our skills and develop our knowledge. So it is very useful to continue learning about things that really interest us. And this is why it is really helpful to pay attention to our interests. Finally, it is really helpful to think about what would I like to say about my life, my career when I am 90 or 80. And thinking about our career from this perspective may enable us to see our choices in a different proportion, from a different perspective, and may help us to reflect on what can I do that will make me happy and proud even in my retirement age, and what legacy would I like to leave for younger generations, and what impact or input to the world I would like to make. The next thing that really helped me to choose my career was realizing that, of course, there are some careers that are totally inaccessible to blind people, but there are many careers in which we will be able to find a pathway that will be accessible to us. And I will maybe clarify what I mean by this by using my own example. So when I chose psychology as my career, I realized that not all of the pathways in that career are accessible to me. So for instance, I realized that it would be very difficult for me to work as a neuropsychologist. And this was because many of neuropsychology tests are based on graphics, and neuropsychologists often refer and use in their work imaging, let's say imaging of the brain. And this is why if I insisted to work in that field, I would require a lot of support, and my concern was that I will in a way lose my autonomy as an employee, and I didn't want that to happen. This is why I continued to explore the field of psychology, and I identified that, for instance, being psychotherapist is accessible pathway for me, or being clinical psychologist would be accessible for me. So I clearly identified pathways that were less accessible and pathways that were more accessible. And I think that whenever we consider different areas of work or different careers, it is very important to explore all of the aspects of certain careers to just double check which pathways will be accessible for us and which won't be. The next thing that was really useful for me was realizing that as long as I am independent in responsibilities that are key to my job role, I'm okay. So what I mean by this is that unfortunately, probably there are very few workplaces or careers that would be 100% accessible to us. And in majority of jobs and careers, we will need some support with some things. So the most helpful thing to do is to check what the key responsibilities are in certain jobs and whether we can be independent in that key responsibilities. So for instance, I am fully independent in my key responsibilities as a therapist, but sometimes I need help with tasks that are not key responsibilities of the therapist. So for instance, sometimes I need help with booking appointments because not in all of my jobs the system that I was using was fully accessible, and sometimes some parts of computer systems were not accessible and I needed some help with tasks that were luckily more administrative tasks. And I was absolutely fine with asking for help with these things, and I didn't feel that, my value as a therapist was in any way jeopardized. The next thing that I would like to mention is that it is very important to remember that accessibility of certain jobs may depend not on a profession but on a workplace. So for instance, one company may use more accessible software than other company, and we may be able to do certain job role in one company, but in different workplace it may be impossible. So before we give up on the idea regarding job career, it is important to explore our options. The next thing that I would like to mention, but I am aware that it is kind of just my view and that many people may not share that view with me, is that I feel very confident and I find it very helpful to know that skills that I have are in a way like specialist skills, that they are valued and that they are valued on the market. and also that they can be objectively assessed. And thanks to that, I have noticed that during my job interviews, focus of attention is actually on my professional skills and not on my limitations as a blind person. And this is really helping me to be confident and to kind of present myself in a positive light, because I feel that I have value as an employee, no matter whether I have limitations regarding to sight loss or not. Now, the next point that I would like to mention is that it really helped me to realize that I don't have to be perfect. And what I mean by this is that when I was starting my career, I had this feeling that because I already come with some limitations, that sometimes I may be slower with completing some tasks, or that sometimes I may be unable to do some tasks, that in everything else I have to be perfect. And of course, it is impossible to be perfect. We are just humans and nobody is perfect. And having that unrealistic expectations was constantly putting a lot of pressure on me and was very frustrating. So, of course, we have to work to our best ability, but we have to have realistic expectations of ourselves. The next thing is that it really helped me to make a choice of my career, that I was lucky to meet many inspiring people in my life, and that I tried to surround myself with inspiring people. And this inspiration was not always related strictly to work or to, career opportunities. It was literally about anything like art, traveling, literature, interesting initiatives, ideas, and being around inspiring people just opened my horizons and made me consider many options that I wouldn't be aware of. The next thing is engaging in inspiring activities, and again, having opportunity to participate in inspiring activities gave me kind of courage to make sure that I choose profession that will matter to me, that will be important to me, where I feel that I make a difference, where I feel that I may be able to make positive impact, and again open my mind to new possibilities and new options. Another thing is what I mentioned before, and this is learning from other blind people who already are in employment. And this really helped me on many levels, because not only I learned practical tips from other blind people, but I also learned kind of how to tune my attitude and how to adjust to different situations, how to overcome different barriers, how to search for help, how to accept help, and so on and so forth. Then the next thing was talking to people who already worked in careers that interested me particularly. And here I think about both sighted and blind people, and talking to people who already were doing jobs that I was interested in really helped me to realize what obstacles I may expect, what help I may need, how I need to better prepare, and what kind of position would be best for me. Okay, so now I will move to the final part of this video, and I will mention all of these things that help me to put my plans into practice and achieve my career goals so far. So the first thing that I would like to mention is the fact that after losing my sight, I received a lot of professional help with learning mobility and orientation skills. And after finishing my education in the school for the blind, I was able to, go and follow the routes that I was familiar with, but I also had enough confidence to go to places with which I was not very familiar. So thanks to investing a lot and receiving a lot of help with improving my mobility skills and learning, how to, for instance, walk with the cane, moving to a new place was never an obstacle for me. And I always believe that with a little bit of support, I will be able to cope. And I also knew that not necessarily I will always need like professional support. Sometimes I simply ask friends for help. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And what I also wanted to mention is that I continued to develop these skills. So for instance, when I was at university, I received my first guide dog, and I invested a lot of energy into kind of mastering walking with the guide dog, and that took me to a different level, and I benefit from these skills till this day. And then the next thing that I would like to mention, which is kind of similar, but I really wanted to emphasize it and to make a different, a separate point from this, is learning daily living skills and receiving a lot of professional help with learning daily living skills. So by daily living skills, I mean preparing meals, looking after my appearance, my clothes, cleaning my, surroundings, my flat, where I live, where I work, doing shopping and all of this, daily jobs that we have to do to live independently. And thanks to the fact that I managed to develop all of these skills, I was absolutely okay to move to a different town in Poland, to move then to a foreign country, to move, to different towns in this country. And living on my own was never an obstacle for me. So I would strongly recommend investing energy in learning daily living skills. The next thing that I would like to mention is learning Braille. And I know that many people now believe that Braille can be replaced by technology. And yes, I agree, but I find knowing Braille very helpful, and I use it on, daily basis. For instance, I label all of my documents in Braille, all of my folders, and this helps me to be organized with my paperwork. And also when, for instance, I learn a large portion of, material, then and I don't have to learn a lot of detail, then I listen to text. But when I have to learn something in a lot of detail, then I find Braille very useful. Or for instance, when I edit text and I want to be very, particular about, editing it correctly, then I also find Braille very useful. Then the next thing is learning to use technology for the blind, and especially being able to use computer without sight. So being able to use all of these screen readers that are accessible and that are available, and using other technology, like for instance scanners, which enable us to access text, and to use other equipment that may make our life easier. And then what I also wanted to mention is that I found it particularly important to sort of keep up to date with technology, because technology improves very dynamically, and what was inaccessible impossible a few years ago, now it is accessible and possible. So I believe that in few years jobs and careers that may be inaccessible for us now may be accessible in the future. So, I would say we have to watch this space. The next thing that I would like to mention is the fact that I always took every opportunity to gain some work experience. So I started volunteering in second year of psychology, and in Poland psychology takes 5 years to complete. And thanks to the fact that I volunteered in many different places, I already knew in which environments I would like to work, what could be difficult for me, what obstacles I may encounter. I already had opportunity to think about some ways of overcoming them, and I basically felt more prepared and more confident that I will cope. The next thing that I would like to mention is the fact that I was prepared to take jobs that were not always ideal for me. And here I am absolutely okay sharing with you that when I was volunteering as honorary assistant psychologist, of course I wasn't paid for this job, and I was very new to England, so I wasn't entitled to any benefits, but I had to make some money to live on. So I didn't hesitate to work as a direct collector to a charity, which meant that I was sort of coordinating fundraising. So I had to go to supermarkets and organize a stand for a charity, put money boxes out, and share with people information about this charity and how these funds are going to be used. And that was really hard job physically, because I had to stand for many hours, and very often I was standing in very bad weather conditions. But if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to complete that, voluntary work, and quite possibly I wouldn't be able to make further steps. So it was really worth doing this, and I would strongly recommend that that you are never put off, even if you have to do some jobs that are maybe not ideal. Then the next thing that I would like to mention is the fact that I was always very persistent. And I am okay to share with you that before I got my first paid full-time job, I had 12 unsuccessful interviews, and I probably sent 40 applications. And after each unsuccessful interview, of course, I was worried that I may never be able to find a job. But I always had this thought that if I never stop looking and if I never give up, I will finally find something. And that gave me a lot of hope and courage to be persistent. Another thing that I would like to mention is that I was always very flexible, and that whenever I am looking for a new job, I am not only looking in my area, but I look for a job around whole country, and I consider moving, because to be fair, it is hard to find a job for everybody. So in some ways, everybody, sighted people also sometimes have to move. So it is important to be open to this, options. Another thing is that I believe that I always was ready to take a lot of initiative in overcoming barriers that I encountered, and I wasn't always waiting for help or expecting that somebody would solve my difficulties. And I always try to be very creative in looking for solutions. So for instance, once I had to learn some graphics that I need for my work, and I didn't have funds to have these graphics done professionally. So my colleagues helped me to create these graphics just using glue gun. Or once I had to learn a layout of a new building, which was quite complex. So again, I learned the layout using just Lego and some Play-Doh. So being creative and open to, not standard solutions may be also important. Another thing that I would like to mention is that it is always important to feel, to be open and listen to advice, but it is crucial that after listening to advice, we make our own decisions. And I know that some blind people who receive advice or are given guidance may feel a little bit patronized and may not feel confident enough to kind of, say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but this is my decision. But we have to remember that it is us who will take, who will suffer consequences of our decisions. And no matter whether they're positive or negative experiences, so decisions have to be ours. The next thing that I wanted to say, that of course everything that I have achieved so far, I have achieved thanks to people that were around me and that were supporting me, and thanks to all of the support that I continue receiving. And I just wanted to thank everybody for their help and support and encouragement. And I wanted to emphasize that I appreciate all of your help and support. And the last thing that I would like to mention is the fact that although limitations resulting from sight loss are difficult, and of course blindness is limiting our options, I believe that at the same time all of these obstacles may be treated by us as challenges. And I wanted to wish all of you that you have optimism in yourself, courage and strength to treat obstacles as challenges to overcome, and that you will be never stopped by them, but you will be always in a way inspired by them and motivated by them to develop further. And I would like to thank you for your attention today, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye bye!